What's up everybody, welcome back to another episode of ACC Basics. In today's video I wanted to discuss setups and what impact each variable of a setup has. I wanted to tackle this topic a little bit different than the other videos that are available online. Most of them are 20 to 30 minutes, if not longer. That's why I wanted to make this setup guide somewhat less scientific, shorter and more to the point. This video will cover the basics of setting up your car, but we won't dive too deep here. Just so you know, we won't cover all the parts of car setups. The first thing we need to cover are the three basic setups ACC offers out of the box: the safe, the aggressive and the wet preset. And these are great starting points which you can expand upon. The safe preset has, in my opinion, only one purpose. It's meant for people who are new to sim racing and ACC. It's a great setup to learn the tracks, how to deal with the force feedback and learn how the physics work. Once you get those basics under control, you should switch to the aggressive setup. The wet preset is obviously for driving in the rain. Most times it works fairly well, but the only thing I would change is the tire pressure, as they tend to run a little hot when the track gets a little toasty. The aggressive preset is really quite good for most cars and track combinations. I've seen amazing qualifying times from people who just used the aggressive preset without any changes. Don't be mistaken, it's very capable. Before changing anything about your setup, it's important to know what you're aiming for. Find a problem you have and work from there. Let me give you an example. If you feel like your car is understeering when entering the corners, fixing that problem should be the focus of your setup change. So look for a specific problem you're having and see if you can fix it with a setup change. Sometimes the problem you're having is just your driving style, but I won't get into that now. I can't stress this enough. Never change more than one variable at a time when you're looking for solutions. Otherwise, you won't really know what effect each change has on its own. Change one variable like tire pressures and test it out on track. See what the effect is. Has your problem gone away a bit? Good. See if you can expand upon your new setup. Has the problem worsened? Change it back and look for a different solution. To help you along with this process, I'm gonna discuss some things you can change and what it affects, so you can deal with the problems you come across on your own. The first step of a good setup change are the tires, and the first variable you can change is the PSI. Playing around with PSI settings gives you the ability to mess with tire pressures. Tire pressures affect three things: the amount of grip your tires have, the temperature of your tires, and the degradation of your tires. In most cases, you want to aim for the optimal tire pressure, which is somewhere in between 27 and 28 psi. Your tires should be around that number when they're hot, and the setup screen lets you know what your tire pressure is gonna be when your tires are hot. So here you gotta do a little quick maths. If the pressure is lower than the optimal range, you'll go a little slower, your tires will wear out faster, but you'll have a little bit more grip. And the opposite is also true. When the tires are too hard, you'll have less grip, but you'll also go a little bit faster. Just remember, these tires are designed to perform the best at 27 to 28 psi, so I would keep them in that optimal range. When the experts are talking about toe, they mean the angle of the wheels in relation to the center of the car when you view it from above. The picture on screen will explain it perfectly, because that sentence is a little long-winded. The toe settings have an impact on the stability of the car in a straight line, how it handles in the corners and the tire temperatures. When we're talking about toe, you can either have toe in, which is represented by the positive values, and toe out, which is represented by the negative values. For the front wheels, toe in will make your car more stable, but it can cause understeer, and toe out will make your car more responsive in the corners, but too much can cause oversteer. For the rear wheels, toe in will increase rear stability, and toe out will enable drift mode. Just don't do toe out. Don't do toe out on the rear wheels, because you'll be slipping and sliding through every corner. Your car will be unmanageable. And now we're on to the electronics, and the first item in that department is traction control. When you have zero traction control, your tires will spin as fast as they can when they don't have grip. Traction control combats all this wheel spin by pumping the brakes until the wheels find traction again. This means that traction control will slow you down, but it helps with not spinning out. Real-life GT3 cars make use of traction control, so don't just turn it off completely because you want to go fast. You won't be slowed down by traction control if you use your throttle correctly. And if you think you're spinning out too often, use a little bit more traction control. The next item is ABS. And ABS stops your brakes from locking up. Instead of using 100% of your brakes at once, it will pump the brakes as to not lock them up. The upside of ABS is that your brakes won't lock up that easily and you won't slide off of the course. The downside is that your braking distance will increase. You can run lower ABS when you're a master of proper braking technique. But if you think your brakes lock up too easily, use a somewhat higher ABS setting. The ECU maps are a little more complicated than I can explain, so I'll try my best to explain it as simple as I can. The lowest ECU map will make your car very fast but consumes a lot of fuel. The highest ECU map does the opposite. It makes your car a little bit slower, but the fuel consumption goes way down. And now we're on to the last part of the setup, the aerodynamics. These impact the speed and the handling of your vehicle at higher speeds. Your aero settings can make or break your setup, and the first part of aero is ride height. This affects the amount of downforce your car has. A simple explanation of the ride height is when the front is higher than the rear. You'll have less downforce and more speed, and it works vice versa as well. A higher downforce increases the amount of grip your car has at a higher speed. But if you mess with the balance of the aerodynamics, you can make your vehicle very unstable. Changing the ride height is expressed in millimeters in ACC, and you might think that's not so much. But in a developer blog post, they posted that 1 millimeter of changes can amount to a 2% shift of the aero balance. So my advice is to leave the ride height on the aggressive preset or adjust it in a way that keeps the same aero balance. And now for the rear wing. Increasing the amount of rear wing will increase the amount of downforce your car has at the rear. This is a way to get rid of oversteer problems because the aero balance will shift somewhat more to the back. But too much rear wing will introduce understeer and decrease your top speed. And then we got the front splitter. Increasing the amount of front splitter will give you more downforce at the front, resulting in more grip at the front tires. The aero balance will shift to the front the more you increase the front splitter. When you set it right, it will decrease understeer, but set it too high and you'll get some oversteer. And now we're on to the last part of the aerodynamics, the brake ducts. The brake ducts affect your brake temperature, the tire temperature, and the aerodynamics of the car. The function of the brake ducts is to let air flow to your brakes and keep them cool. When you set the brake ducts to 0, they are completely closed, and the highest setting is fully open. That being said, you shouldn't ever fully open or close them, because your brakes will either be too hot when they're fully closed or too cold when they're fully open. The brake ducts also impact what the peak temperature of your brakes can be and how much heat is retained in the brakes after you let go of the braking pedal. When the brake ducts are on a low setting, the maximum temperature will be higher and they'll stay hot for a longer time. The opposite is also true for the higher settings with keeping them cold. You found the optimal settings when you've driven a few laps and your brakes in the front show green, edging towards yellow after a braking zone, and your rear brakes should be green. This is all displayed on the heads-up display. The aerodynamic impact of the brake ducts is less important than the right temperature of your brakes, because the optimal temperature for your brakes will let your car brake the best to its ability. And with that, I think I've covered enough information to help you get rid of most problems you might run into. And I know this guide doesn't cover all the setup options, but in my opinion, everything that's covered are the essentials. I hope this information was helpful. Leave a like if that's the case and subscribe for more sim racing content. You can leave any questions in the comments down below and let me know if you have some different views on the topics I covered today. Thanks for watching and I hope to see you next time, my beautiful baby boys. Mwah.